Rebel Devs Podcast, a show that challenges conventional thinking in the tech industry. Each episode features conversations with solutionists who have taken unconventional approaches to problem solving, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in their respective fields. Join the devolution.
Hey everybody, this is Tom May with Rebel Devs. We've given Jonah the day off. Apparently he wanted to go and actually tech things instead of being on a podcast today. So we're excited to hear what he's up to and can't wait to hear about those projects. But I'm never just alone because nobody wants to talk to me. I do have a friend here, Nathan Golden of Managecast. And before I go too far, I'm going to let the man himself tell us a little bit about himself. So Nathan, how are you doing today?
Hey, Tom, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you making time and let me come here and talk to your audience. I'm Nathan Golden. I'm the owner of Managecast. We're a longtime Veeam service provider. We've been in business for 25 years. Obviously not a Veeam service provider for that long, but we've been in this business a long time and seen a thing or two.
That's awesome. I think I want to dive a little bit in there because everybody has their own journey when it comes to Veeam. I've probably told this story 100 times before, so I am going to give a high level of myself because at some point we intersect in getting to know each other in the Veeam community. And myself, I was one of the originators of a company called Global Data Vault. I wasn't a founder, but I was early in. And we dealt with a product called ASE, which was a file level backup system. If it's out there, it's still awesome and does what it does. But we really started to realize there were shortcomings. People would back up files for QuickBooks, SQL, whatever. We'd recover it. They'd be happy. Then they'd go to install these pieces or these files that we recovered or SQL backups, and suddenly SQL wasn't patched up. So we started really seeing a gap, and we decided that there needed to be DR before DR was a thing. And we went through and played around, and fast forward years later, eventually we get to Veeam. And this product was really starting to make its mark about Veeam 4, I think is when I started getting involved. And there wasn't a big shift in virtual machines. So we really weren't driving home with it. We were still using a product called StorageCraft, and it did a great job, but it fell short. I'd always nail bite whether or not it would work. And with Veeam, we started watching more and more. I never had to nail bite. I always knew it would recover. It would come up. It was just amazing. And so we grew that business quite a bit. And as a service provider, we hit some of the earliest platinum levels, with kind of being one of the big three back in the day when there really were probably 50 to 100 service providers, I suppose. But along the way, we kept going to different conferences and whatnot, like VeeamON, and we'd always take interest in the innovation awards. And sure as anything, I think one of the earlier ones was won by your team. Isn't that right? Didn't you get an early accolade out there with the innovation awards?
We did. It was the year of the pandemic, 2020. And normally we would have, I think that year, VeeamON was in Vegas, and we would have been able to go on stage and accept the award, but that was, everybody was remote that year. So missed out on the glory, but we did get recognized. So that was great.
Oh, man, I didn't realize I didn't bring you up on stage, but I was so impressed with the product because as I went through my journey, I struggled to really grow my business from just a cloud provider and grappled certain challenges along the way. Veeam used to very much try to sell everyone on being a cloud service provider before there were a lot of them. And they were like, just install this cloud server, start catching some data and watch the dollars fly. And hot dog, if it didn't work that way for server number 1. By the time we were up about server 98, it was becoming more and more tedious in my world to go ahead and actually not just maintain this infrastructure and patch it, but to actually say, what is going on with Veeam? My support teams would struggle. We'd build these convoluted systems that were very complex, and I loved them. They were amazing. The best thing ever, but very hard to maintain. And when I saw your innovation award come through, I was very curious about it. And a mutual friend of ours at Veeam, Tim Hudson, he said, well, I know Nathan, and they're a great team. You guys would really dig them. So we started reaching out to you to talk about this portal and what you won your innovation award. And I remember you showed me quite a bit of it, and I was really impressed to where I wanted to start using it, and it wasn't there. So I'm going to hand back to you, but just to let our listeners know, this is part of our series of products that we enjoy. And to preface this, Managecast is not paying us to have them on the call or the podcast. In fact, Nathan and I have been looking at his portal still together week over week. I love this thing. And at Different Dev, we use this portal. And I can really see it filling in a lot of the gaps. Knowing that I built a system that was so hard, I can see where this product is really revolutionary for cloud service providers, but also shops that want to know what's going on with Veeam. You might use the managed service provider console, and I love that product. It's a great aggregator of data. It is not a user interface. It is not user friendly. You will not run your business with that. I'm sorry, but you will get the data you need from the field. And this Managecast portal really layers onto that pretty seamlessly and makes a difference. So in our world, it hooks to our ConnectWise is just the heartbeat of knowing what's going on. But every morning when our folks wake up, we can go ahead and know the state of the union and how to work it. And I can see the blood and sweat and tears that the Managecast team have put into this to build something that really is usable. To me, it's something that came out of struggle, kind of like what I had, but they just finessed it so much and it's so mature now. So I'm pitching it back over to you, a product that we love, we're using, transparent. So Nathan, tell us a little bit about how did this thing birth? Like, why did you do this product?
Yeah, thanks for that. And you shared your background with us, and I want to give you a little bit of our background because we didn't just start off day one and build a portal. So we've been in business for almost 25 years. The first 9 years or so, we were pretty much just a consulting company, all things to all people. 2009, we started to see, the cloud start to be introduced, and we looked at our business and what do we do to keep up and adapt to the market. And, cloud was definitely something that was very interesting to us, and backup and DR, I think, is still to this day one of the number one use cases of cloud. And so we decided to get into backup and DR and cloud, and we started with a different product before Seeger. This is 2009 again. And we didn't go to Veeam until 2015. I think it was like probably the third or fourth quarter of 2014 that Veeam released their Cloud Connect capability. And if you were using it before then, you were probably using VPNs and other things. And we kind of avoided that because the products we were using at the time didn't require us to use VPNs. And so we didn't really take Veeam seriously until they came out with Cloud Connect. But we almost immediately deployed Cloud Connect. And at that time, we had 0 customers on Veeam, but the Veeam market share was so huge, it really grew. And between 2015 and, or really 2009 or 2015 to now, we went from no Veeam to 95% of our business is Veeam today. So we are a Veeam shop. We're a service provider that focuses on backup and disaster recovery. It's all we do. So this isn't a component of our business or a department. This is our entire business, is backup and DR. And then out of that, Veeam is 95% of that business today. And as we grew with Veeam, we added customers quickly. And what we found is that it was more difficult for us to manage and monitor Veeam than it was our previous solution, which was probably harder to sell and not as well known. But it had better interfaces for service providers that had to manage, tens, if not hundreds of customers. And so as our Veeam business grew, we really struggled, I think, to perform a great job. And let me back up and say, I kind of wish I went down the road of the utility provider back in 2009, but that didn't really even enter into my mind. I wanted to be a service provider, a managed service provider, so that if the customer's backup stopped, I would actually tell them that it stopped, right? I didn't, a lot of service providers, you look at Backblaze and the Wasabis out there in the world, they're just utilities, right? It's like if your backup stopped going to them, no one cares, right? It's your responsibility as the customer to make sure that stays operational, or up to the MSP to make sure that stays operational, right? Somebody has to monitor the backup. Somebody has to make sure the backups are working. And from the very beginning, in 2009, based on the previous 9 years of being a business, I knew our customers were not great at always doing their backups, checking their backups. We had a credit union once that called us and they had a drive failure, and we went out and worked on their server and asked for their backup tapes. I think they were running backup exec and tapes. We all remember that in the days. And they had made a backup in 6 months. And they were like, hey, we've been changing this tape every day. And I was like, well, that doesn't mean the backup actually ran. So we knew from those experiences that customers didn't always check their backups, didn't always manage their backups properly. And so from the very, very beginning, we wanted to provide that managed service around backup and DR. And so it was very important to us to make sure that we didn't miss anything. The worst nightmare for me is to have a customer call in and say, hey, we just got hit by ransomware. And then my response is, I'm sorry, your backups haven't run for 2 weeks or 2 months or whatever it is. Man, it's just horrible. Like that's what I wake up every morning thinking, like, I don't want to get a call like that. If somebody calls in and got hit by ransomware, we want to be able to tell them, yeah, no problem. If there are problems with the backups, hopefully I've got tickets open. I've reached out to them. I've notified them. I've told them of the problem. As we moved to Veeam, it was harder to make sure we provide that top level service to our customers. And so at the time, Veeam Service Provider didn't exist. And even when Veeam Service Provider Console was released, it wasn't efficient for us. And so we set out to build our own interface. It was for our own needs, our own, consumption. We still use it now today. And if we ever missed something, and, day one, we're not perfect, right? The portal's not going to tell us everything. But as we miss things, or if we miss things, we would, research that and figure out, why did we miss that? Can we do something to make sure we never miss that again? For instance, if something doesn't run, right? What if a backup doesn't run at all and there's no alert sent or anything like that, right? We want to make sure that we don't miss things like that. So we've built a lot of logic and intelligence there for ourselves. And then fast forward to today, we have other service providers. And I guess as we develop the portal, we recognize, hey, this helped us, this helped our business. What do other service providers do? I know there's other products on the market that, kind of do what we're doing, but none of them, I don't think, focus on Veeam like we do. And that's our Achilles heel too, right? So if you have Commvault, I can't do anything to monitor Commvault or help you with Commvault, right? But if it's Veeam, that's our swim lane. That's what we do. So anyway, that was the genesis of the portal. Even to this day, I don't know of any other service provider that provides the level of detail and really built for a service provider that has to check many backups a day. If you've got 3 backups, 3 customers, okay, you probably don't need it, right? But if you get 50, 100, as your number goes up, your need to manage all that and make sure you don't miss anything increases exponentially. So that's what we set out to fix for ourselves. And again, we have other service providers today that also use our platform. And it doesn't mean that the backups have to come to us, right? We built a platform to hook into other Veeam service providers. Ironically, we use Veeam Service Provider Console as the source of all of our data. So we didn't try to replace it necessarily. We just, create a more efficient interface for us. And I think it's more efficient overall than to use Veeam Service Provider Console alone. And we could talk a little bit more about it and talk about our 365 provisioning, which is a whole different topic of discussion, but that kind of gives you some of the background and how we got to where we are today.
No, that's great. And honestly, you said ironically you built it on the managed service provider console. I remember being with the original development teams at Veeam, helping develop that and giving them feedback. So we became the business use case for them of what we needed in there. But there's so many features in there I don't think people realize because they're not in the GUI. So for example, you can go ahead and start and stop jobs remotely using the service provider console. And for us, we were able to move into patch cycles. One of the things we did was we had all these appliances out in the field that needed patching. So what we did is we wrote a bunch of scripts that utilized API calls against the service provider console that would basically say, remote system, are you running anything right now? Are you consolidating anything now? And this could be the cloud server. This could be the remote VBR. Didn't matter. We could contact one single server and we could hit this and find status. Then we could pause a job, disable them. We could then execute our patch cycles. Then we could come up and check state, and we could then say resume jobs and also say check state. Did they really resume? That was really powerful. You will get none of that in the GUI of Service Provider Console. And there is just a plethora of information that APIs provide to basically either command or not. So building the Managecast portal right on top of it is absolutely genius. As new features come about, you will be able to harness that as you need to in your business and by proxy other people as well. And we see licensing in there. We see so many, much more data usage reporting in there, quotas are in there. There's so much in there that is really built into being able to do in Service Provider Console, and not much is in the GUI, to the fact where when you talk to internal Veeam, many times they say, hey, we want you to build your own portal. This is a mechanism to talk to it. That's their official stance right now. And you guys at Managecast are light years ahead of this. And what I love about this product is, yes, we get the quality statistics in there. When we look at your portal, we get to see gauges. We get to see greens and reds and yellows. And so we know the state. We know the histories for day over day, week over week, month over month. We can see all of that in there. But as a support shop first, everybody has to look at making sure things run properly. Before we get to an RPO, before we know a recovery time, I always say, like, we need to be green and clean. And when you take a Managecast portal, you consolidate all of your customers into this view in a white labeled solution. Your URL is white labeled, your screens are white labeled, your reports are white labeled. Nathan, you spoke about some other products. I've used some of them, the backup radars. I've looked at Backup Eagle out there that claim to do this across many different areas. First of all, some of those are really cost prohibitive all day long. And the more you use it, the more it hurts you, essentially. Your price pointing, from what I can remember, is much more advantageous to there. But
we're not getting rich off of it.
Well, but it works so well because where their systems are really not reporting in well, when you wake up and the first person logs in and looks at this portal, they're like, oh, here are my problem children. And you can click and drill through right on down, and it speaks Veeam. So if you speak Veeam and use Veeam, this is in your native language. You're not learning something else per se, and you're seeing the error messages and groupings, and you have some knowledge base behind it too. We were playing with one of my test accounts the other day, and we kept getting this weird sort of Office 365 error. And as we dove into it, we realized, okay, we needed to make some changes to SharePoint. You all pointed me in the right direction with just a simple click in the portal. It said, Tom, you have this error. Click here. I saw that it had 12 of them because it ran 12 times during the day. All right, click it. Boom, try these things. I tried these things, and then I even tried scripting a little bit more, and I got to the end and I was like, man, this is a hub-based SharePoint. I can't really do much. And submit a trouble ticket, and within an hour or so, the Managecast team engages, and they're like, hey, man, how about XYZ? Do this. And I was like, very, very nice. So it just flowed. So now I put on this idea of, and I'm not this really, I'm a service provider at Different Dev, but really it's not our bread and butter. We kind of are registered there because as a professional service company, we need to get access to software for customers. So we're there. I'm not really looking to be, the catch-all to everything here for people. That's why guys like you exist, Nathan. But if I'm coming up in the world and going, I'm an MSP, and I really don't want to use a cloud service provider. Why would I send stuff over there? I think that's a topic for another day, why you should. But if you decide to build out the system and you overcome all the technical hurdles, you're still trapped with, what do I do day over day to know everything's working? Do I have to go into each cloud server and look at job history? Well, guess what? You're not going to find that there. Do you have to remote into every customer's VBR and look through every job history? You're going to go insane. Do you look at the service provider console? There's some reports in there to help you. They don't really help you. Do you take Veeam 1 and email? Do you see where this complexity just stacks versus you talk to Managecast? And I encourage you to go to managecast.com or reach out to Nathan here. He'll share his contact information and whatnot, and get eyes on this, get a demo and see. Your team will come in, log in. You will see all of your problem children. You can click it. You can have exactly what's going on and a graphical interface that makes sense to be able to go back and work your Veeam. And you can acknowledge things like a ticketing system. It's definitely not a ticketing system, but it's so parallel to it. It works really well. And then for us, we have it hooked to our ConnectWise. So if I do want a ConnectWise, which many MSPs use, click it, opens a ticket. Well, folks, now you're into a ticket with a customer, which means you're tracking time in ConnectWise. If you have that open in another window, now your people are getting billed perfectly. You can't be in Veeam business without a product like this. And that's how strongly I feel about it and why you're on the podcast today. When you have a cloud service provider, you need to have a really effective tool. this tool is really effective for your support staff to work. And what's even better is I always tell my customers transparency is key. It's a zero trust model. Knowing that somebody is looking at something, which means the customer can log into a branded portal, different dev, see everything that's going on with their backups and see, are we absolutely doing what we promised to do? When they're in our maintenance and monitoring plans, we are their Veeam team. It runs on their prem and multitude of data centers, if you will, but now they can log in and say, is different dev being honest? Are they really fixing things? Are they really working? And between my ConnectWise portal and my Managecast portal, they can really see everything we're doing in real time. So we're held accountable, knowing if we blow off a customer, they're going to know pretty quickly. And that's what's so powerful about this. So service providers, if you are silver, trying to go to gold going to platinum, if you're platinum trying to figure out how do I do all this, I don't think you want to build it from my experience. I built one years ago, and it is not as sleek as this product. I think Nathan started it after we had been building for years, so we had a lot of cluttered code. He's a lot more slipstreamed, but my goodness, like that's the recommendation I make here. If you're listening, check it out, talk to Nathan, check the product out. I think it's going to blow your mind away. The white labeling in itself is just light years ahead of a lot of other places. You'll get little things like, oh, it's totally white labeled, and you log in and find out, and this is a competitor now. Oh, look, my logo's on a screen, but their URL is not my URL. Okay, how does it call data? It does Veeam emails, and so now I have to use whatever at their domain. Some of them are starting to just getting into the service provider console area, so good for them, but it's not quite there yet. So really, when you're providing service to a customer, do you want to say, hey, guess what? I am a service provider, but I use some other product. You don't really want to advertise that, because if you have a big enough shop, these guys are like, well, why do I pay you for a monitoring, whatever? With Nathan and company, this is essentially your portal. You're buying software that runs your business, and it looks like it's you. So in my mind, my customer doesn't care that I use ConnectWise. They might be upset thinking, well, I don't really do anything here. I just conglomerate a bunch of software. And this portal really is a little bit beyond that. I mean, I'm surprised that the service provider console never grew into this, and I don't think it will, because Veeam realizes every company wants to have their own. But again, if you're waking up in the morning and having a panic attack, like Nathan said, and like I've had, you want something where you can look and say, oh, look, it's looking good, by all means. So definitely, Nathan, how do we get in contact with you? How do we see a demo? Because we're audio only here, because people like to travel and listen in their ears and whatnot. So we're not showing anything on the screen. What do you offer? Can you show them a demo? Do they get a trial? How do they get in contact with you all?
Yeah, so you can just email us, sales@managecast.com. You can email me at ngolden@managecast.com, but sales@managecast.com is probably easier to remember. Or you can just go to managecast.com, and we have areas there. You can click on a form to contact us. Usually we're pretty responsive. And I would encourage people, if you're just a service provider or an MSP or even potential clients, if you just want to ask me questions. I mean, we've been in this business for a long time. We've got some scar tissue, got some do's and don'ts, some best practices. Happy to have a discussion. If it leads to working together, great. If it doesn't, I understand that too. But I would just, if you want to talk about Veeam, that's my life, right? I get up every day thinking about it, talking to customers about it, talking to my engineers internally about it, talking to our developers about it. So if you want to talk about Veeam, we'd love to have a discussion with you.
I think I want to close out on your Office 365 offering. So in this portal, which is what really piqued my curiosity, you and I had some conversations, and you showed me that I can have my own 365 portal that each customer can log into, essentially, and they can even provision their own items in there. And it's all built into your cost structure. So as a service provider, I can have a full white labeled M365 portal over here tied into the Managecast portal, because really it's kind of the same operation. I'm clicking into a different part of the portal. And I was surprised by that. And as I started looking at the pricing, I thought, well, and I'm going to go there. I know you might not, but I looked at the Veeam Data Cloud and I'm like, oh, look at the pricing over there. I can do this and I can toss into some storage. And I have a couple different derivatives of that. But as we look at different business with the Managecast portal, wait a minute. Now I've got this cohesive solution that has reporting, that has the ability for me to provision and watch metrics in there. My customers now can have their own login and they can do their own provisioning if I want them to. And you, of course, did, user access control. So clearly least privilege. You don't have to give everybody God rights, but you could. They could be over multiple customers. You've really built this ecosystem of making Office 365 product available. And I'm going to kick it to you, but here's my experience with Office 365. I started with Veeam 1. It was like beta out in the world. It was terrible. And we ran into databasing issues. And now that we're on V7, V8, the world has changed quite a bit with this product. And it's great, but I struggle if I'm a cloud provider coming new into the market or I'm on a lower level to get to the next level. I'm making big capital purchases. I mean, every other day I was buying servers and rack space and 3 or 4 data centers and 25 racks and hundreds of servers to be able to provide. And as quickly as I was selling things, I was struggling with spinning this up. What I kind of like about your model is your pricing is so on par and amazing. And it has all this capability where it's just turnkey day one. I don't ever have to worry about my infrastructure. Truly, I can become a sales organization with Office 365, which I didn't think was all that important, but I started seeing it in my consulting as we were getting into more and more shops. They didn't have 365 protection. And I think you said it was a good growth segment for you. So tell me a little bit more, and the listeners, a little bit about your 365 solution here, which is, of course, part of the portal.
Yeah. So again, we built this for ourselves because we needed it and we wanted to get into kind of the self-service, self-provision type model as well. And so we started developing against. And one of the nice things about Veeam for 365 is that it was built from the ground up to be API driven. So a lot of these other Veeam products, the APIs are being bolted on top of legacy, software that's been around for a long time. But in the case of 365, they built it from the ground up to use APIs. So we leveraged those APIs. We built a web interface around Veeam for 365. So Veeam for 365 is the engine, but the web interface is all driven by us. So we do all the provisioning. We have multi-tenancy. We can even support, like if you have a consultant that works with you and they have their own set of customers, we can provide an account for them. They can then provision their own accounts or their own customers. So it's really built with service providers in mind. And you don't have to use our storage. We can provide the object storage, the compute, we can do everything. But if you're a Veeam service provider that already has Veeam for 365 and you're struggling with the management of the tenants, having to be very involved and do everything for the tenants, they're calling up and opening a support ticket when they need to change a schedule, for example, our portal takes care of all of that. We also integrate with Stripe. So for billing purposes, you can have people sign up with Stripe and use your credit card to pay through the platform now, because we had to develop that for ourselves. And then we make these things available to our other service provider, clients. And as you indicated, 365 has grown significantly. I think our VM backup business grew by, 40 something percent, which is great last year, but our 365 business grew by 160%. So we're seeing a lot of growth in the 365 world. And so, we've got a platform now that allows you to easily go to market and offer it to your clients as a white label solution, allows you to fully manage those end customers. So yes, thank you for allowing me to comment about that.
I mean, it's so powerful because I always picture this Star Trek scenario. Sales is up on the bridge and engineering is down with Scotty, of course. And they're going like, hey, we need another 400 customers coming on board. And literally engineers screaming, we're giving her all she's got. And as you're building this service provider, you're kind of there. And me kind of chuckling, it's like, well, if I had a client that came across that had 800 mailboxes, sure, I could build this whole infrastructure and be like, all right, I can put a server, I have a data center, I can do this, this, and this, and I'll make some profit margin. What I'm not factoring is the maintenance and the patching and all this. Or I can make a little bit less and literally just be like, click, click, click in Managecast, new customer, and then here you go, customer. I can either set it up for you, but you can see everything in the world and it comes all in, it qualities up, and it writes over to your engineering. So now your little Star Trek ship is complaining engineering to wherever. I don't have that problem. I am just sell, baby, sell all over. It's a really great place to grow your service provider. And more often than not, when I was back with my former company before we sold it, people would come to us, same sort of thing, and be like, we want to build this organization. And I would literally tell them, no, you don't. Like, you've missed your timing. Partner with somebody to do something else. You don't want to build cloud servers. Well, that's why Managecast exists in this world. You don't want to, maybe I'm an Office 365 provider, let's say, and you do 365 consulting and you sell Microsoft licenses and you're a platinum partner. You now can have a fully functioning Microsoft 365 backup business by just going into a simple agreement with Managecast, and there's your portal. You're backing up all that stuff. You're not worried about software and data centers and everything else, but something else. I mean, you have to look at your costs, and I've looked at them. We do a lot of cost analysis with customers, and we look at how much is your support cost, your patching, your infrastructure teams to deliver something. And when we get into something in a service provider, we're very much like, you need to know your price points down to how much per gig is it costing. And your gig cost is data center and power and training and the project manager and the accounting person, every single facet in there. What does it cost you to what can you sell? There's so much hidden cost in there you don't realize. And then you're in deep, big time, and you're sourcing capital. That's a big challenge too, is sourcing the capital. Or I can bypass all of that. I mean, you can go to Dell and get a DFS lease. They'll gladly give you 20% interest for 3 years, and you'll pay the full interest even if you pay it off. And then they'll continue to extend lines to you. And then you get into VC money, which gets even more complicated in there. However, you can skip all of that and just go, Nathan, can I get a portal? Boom, done. You're in the 365 business. That's how crazy easy it is. And you can service your own customers as an MSP. If you are a provider and have other MSPs, imagine you're a provider using this service and you have 4 or 10 MSPs that have 10 different customers. Like Nathan said, it's so powerful. They can have their login. They can provision out their endpoint customers. Their endpoint customers get a login and they see just their things. I mean, it has all of that tiering in there to grow your business. You have no CapEx now. It is pure operational and sales. And that's an easier place to be at. You will know your costs. For every one user, it costs this. For every terabyte, essentially, it costs this. That's why partnering with a cloud service provider can be very, very lucrative. You're not going to do it if you're Microsoft.com. We all know that. But if you're somewhere in the upper SMB space, lower enterprise, it's a sweet spot to have somebody else do these things for you. But ask yourself, what is my vendor giving me? And every vendor you go and meet will say they're the best cloud service provider. They give the best service. They give the best whatever. Okay, to a degree. But how do you know? Because Managecast is built around this portal, you're actually getting that in this instance. Or if you're delivering, you're probably making the same promises going, of course we know what's going on. Do you really? And what is it costing you to do that? Enter their portal. So that's why I asked Nathan to come on the show today. And I'm really glad that you were able to join us today. I hope some folks will get out there and check this out. What I would say is, some closing thoughts for yourself. Maybe I was babbling. You had some more thoughts. So before I say our goodbyes, I'm going to turn it over to you for a final thought.
Okay. And I was just going to make a comment when you're talking about, building it yourself, especially when you're, starting off or you don't have a huge customer base. That first gigabyte, that first cost per gig, right? It's going to be $100 a gig. I mean, because you can't divide it over 300 customers, right? I mean, if you already have that, that's great. Maybe you could justify the expense and the outlay, but it is a very capital intensive business to be in. And I want to stress too that if you have if anybody's on the listening that already has an existing Veeam business, they already have infrastructure, they're already running Veeam Service Provider Console. We can snap into that, right? It's not you have to use us. It's not like you have to backups come to us. If you want that or you don't have that already, certainly we can provide that very seamless, integrated, solution that takes care of everything for you. But again, if you have on-prem solutions, if you're an existing service provider, we can potentially help you as well and bolt on to what you're already doing. Just like Tom, I think we bolted into your infrastructure to to deliver the service we're delivering to you. So, and I just want to thank you, Tom, for inviting me again to let me speak. And thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity.
Absolutely. We love pitching products we love. And at Rebel Devs, that's what it's always about. We're part of the Veeam community. For those listening, if it's your first time, I'm a Veeam Vanguard, so considered in their influencing program. We're not out there on TikTok dancing around like fools, but we're involved in the community, and that's the power of Veeam, is the community. So as you look from folks like Rick Vanover up on the stage to watching his tech bites to following him on social, you'll see a bunch of us Vanguards kicking around there. That's what we're doing, and we're behind the scenes with Veeam. Next week, I'll personally be in Germany. Jonah will be there as well. He's a Vanguard too, and we'll be meeting with the development teams for product insight of not just future facing, but feedback of things that we've been allowed to play with. So we're a good outside Veeam, but tight knit community. And I encourage you, get on the forums, post up, read. They're great. Definitely be part of the community. And so as a community member, I love this product. Definitely check it out. But it's time to say goodbye, everybody. Definitely check us out on all your favorite podcast places. Make sure you subscribe and share and tell everybody. So maybe one day we can have a nice little podcast that pays the bills. But right now, we're a scrappy little startup being out here and just talking to a lot of Veeam folks and DR. So we hope you enjoyed. We're going to play some music, and we'll see you next time.
Whether you're a seasoned solutionist or just starting out, the Rebel Devs podcast is a must listen. So join us. Comment, share, and subscribe. Be part of the Rebel Devs.